Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today we are looking at Doctor Who Unbound, Doctor of War, Volume 2, Destiny, released in September of 2022, directed by Barnaby K. Doctor of War Destiny once again stars Colin Baker as the Warrior. Also featured in the cast are Jeffrey Beavers, Louise Jameson, Terry Malloy, and Nicholas Briggs as the Daleks. As always, I do these unscripted, so I am putting a blanket spoiler warning in place just in case I decide to discuss them. If you do not wish to be spoiled, in the description box below will be a link to Big Finish's website where you can purchase Doctor Who Unbound, Doctor of War Volume 2 Destiny. I will try to be as scant on the spoilers as possible, like I did with Volume 1, but also like Volume 1, there is one or two things I will have to spoil in order to talk about it. So the short version is, I really like this. Um, I don't know if I liked it as much as I liked Genesis. And this time when I say don't like, I don't mean in terms of critical consensus. I mean, I really don't know. This is another really strong set for this series. There are times when I think about it, I like this. I still like Genesis more. But then there are times where I think this one's about on par with Genesis. Um, in terms of performance, once again, they are all great. Colin Baker is absolutely magnificent as the Warrior. He does everything to distance this character, this particular iteration, as far away from the Doctor as possible. At this point, I'm tempted to say, kind of like with the David Collings Doctor in Full Fathom 5, this is what the War Doctor should have been in the show. And I will talk about that a little more in regards to the last story. Speaking of, I should have done this before I started getting into my general thoughts and then get into the specifics. This set contains 3 stories. Who Am I by Nigel Fairs, Time Killers by Lizzie Hopley, and The Key to Time by Tim Foley. If I were to rank these stories, a really close call, but I'd probably say Time Killers is my least favorite. Still really good, mind you. And then The Key to Time. And then Who Am I think was the standout of this set. And now we're going back to performances. Once again, I said Colin Baker was really good as the Warrior. No, I don't know if I want to stop there, keep going from there, or save it for when I start kind of talking about the stories individually. Because there is one story where I do have kind of a gripe, kind of a nitpick. So, you know what? Yeah, I'll wait till I get there. The rest of the supporting cast is really well done, with Jeffrey Beavers once again being the standout. He is terrific in this set, as he always is. I still think his best story, or at least my favorite with this version of the Master, is Aftershocks, but he is still magnificent here. Just as dark and manipulative and terrifying. And we will also talk about that. Little bit of foreshadowing, that's one of the things I'm going to be spoiling. I think one of the downgrades is that whereas Genesis was mostly its own thing, branching off into all these different continuities and stuff, with these sort of unique stories, Destiny is kind of calling back to TV Doctor Who stories. It's doing its own thing, and they don't really follow the route the TV stories go, but they kind of evoke them. So, like, Who Am I is an alternate universe take on. I just blanked on the name. The Face of Evil. There we go. And then Time Killers is an alternate universe take / alternate universe sequel to The Keys of Marinus. And then, of course, The Key to Time is a take on season 15. Yeah, no, season 16, excuse me, The Key to Time. Of those, really the weak link there is Who Am I, because Who Am I, for the most part, strictly follows the beats of The Face of Evil, until it doesn't. Whereas other than just generally evoking the stories, Time Killers and The Key to Time sort of really branch off and do their own things without evoking the stories essentially just in name only. Wow, that was kind of word salad, wasn't it? Anyway, where was I going with that? I know I was going somewhere. I don't remember what it was. I guess I'll just go through the stories in order. So, who am I? With this what if premises of what if, with the what if, the Unbound premise of what Doctor of War is, Who Am I is doing a what if of its own. So, in the series, it is implied during Tom Baker's first story, Robot, he briefly flies away in the TARDIS before returning. And it is implied that in that time, he kind of went somewhere on a spaceship and messed with a computer. And then a couple seasons later, that leads to the events of The Face of Evil, where the Doctor finds two tribes at war with each other, the Sevatim and the Tesh. He meets his companion Leela, and then he learns that everything is kind of being dictated by an insane computer called Zoannon because of what he did. I don't know if in the expanded universe it's ever touched on what the Doctor explicitly did to Zoannon, but basically, Who Am I's premise is, what if the Master influenced Zoannon? And Jeffrey Beavers just gets to shine here, as does Louise Jameson. Like, watching her stories, I found her kind of stale as Leela. I love the premise, Eliza Doolittle by way of Red Sonja. So essentially, the Doctor is having sort of a Pygmalion or My Fair Lady relationship with her, minus the romance. But I always just found beyond that the character kind of stale. And I think it strictly is just the character or the material she was given. Because I've talked about this before with some of the other Big Finish things I've talked about, where Louise Jameson has showed up playing other roles, not Leela. She is an absolutely phenomenal actress. And I just find her, and when I watch her TV stuff as Leela, I find her kind of limited by the material. Thankfully, that's not the case here. Even though it is kind of a retread of The Face of Evil, they do some unique things with Leela that allow her to... Where was I going? Expand on the character, at least at this point in her life, that the series didn't really do. Because Leela, for my complaints about the weakness of the material, did have an arc. She sort of slowly becomes more and more civilized, never truly forgetting who she is, but adding more layers to it. And this story, right from the start, because it does go in a drastically different route from The Face of Evil, it still takes time to introduce her and then build and develop her. There's also a very fun scene where Leela and the Master, where Louise Jameson and Jeffrey Beavers recreate the scene from The Face of Evil of the Doctor and Leela's first mating. Remember, it's like, would you like a jelly, baby? So it's true. They say the evil one eats babies. And they do it here with the Master. Would you like an acid drop? So it's true. They say the evil one drinks acid. And it kind of brings me to the big thing that I am going to spoil about this story in order to talk about it and why I love it so much. First of all, the Warrior is barely in this. He only shows up as one of the personalities of Zoannon. But really, this is Jeffrey Beavers' story. And I am really glad that Doctor of War did this, because with the way the Time War works in this continuity, so with the fact that this is an alternate universe take on the Time War, that's how I wanted to go with that. This story does something. So, obviously, Jeffrey Beavers is the Master during the Time War. He is this universe's version of the War Master. And Who Am I is a War Master story. Like, very easily, with how vile the Master gets, and with just how demented his quote-unquote master plan is, I could easily, very, very easily, see Derek Jacobi saying these lines or doing these things. Like, It's that good of a story, and Jeffrey Beavers is magnificent. In fact, his performance here is so much of why this story is my favorite. As the supporting cast is all good too, nothing really much more to say there. It's a really strong opener for this set that the other two stories, while good, don't quite live up to. And really the highlight is Jeffrey Beavers and Louise Jameson. So again, now we're on to Time Killers. This story sees the warrior and the master arrive on Marinus. I feel like I have the same issue with this story that I had with the last story in Genesis, whose name I am now forgetting. The one with Barusa and Ramana. Shoot, that is gonna bug me now that I don't remember what it was. You know, the one that's basically the android invasion with Stigron and the Kralls, but it's also the invasion of time. And I said explicitly in that story that because I am going through Classic Who very slowly, I had not seen the android invasion, and I feel I would have liked that story more had I actually seen it. I feel like it's the same thing here, because I'm also not watching Classic Who in order. I feel like I might have liked this story more if I had liked the Keys of if I had seen the Keys of Marinus, excuse me. Also, this story is kind of messy in terms of structure. Like, you know, you have several plot lines going on. You have the Doctor and the Warrior arriving on Marinus. You have one of the citizens of Marinus trying to help them. And then you also have a storyline with the Master that I'm not going to get into. This story does some interesting things with the Master. And it's trying to juggle all these plot lines, and it doesn't quite work. It's still a good story. There's still some good things here. This is also the story where I think Colin Baker gives his weakest performance. Not because of him. Colin Baker is great all the time. Like I said last in the review for the last volume, I think he is the best actor to have played the Doctor in terms of just raw acting talent. And he's still really good here. The problem is this script has the Warrior at his most Doctorish. So, like, he feels really pulled back from what the Warrior has been so far. There are still instances here and there of the Warrior coming through, but I feel like this script was written for the Doctor, if that makes sense. Also, I keep forgetting to bring this up. I just now realized Doctor of War Destiny is also doing the same thing Genesis did, where this idea that the Time War is not just affecting the universe, it's affecting the multiverse. Like, it's got this really fractured approach to storytelling where even though it's one set, the stories may not even take place in the same continuity. The villain for Time Killers is really interesting, and without going into spoilers, I can't say more than that. The performance is decent. It's like, it starts off really weak, but then as it goes on, it gets really good. I'm trying to be as vague as possible so you can experience this story as blind as possible if you haven't yet. But just, the villain has a lot of snark that's really enjoyable. And I really like the relationship between the Doctor and the Master in this story, where the Master is almost kind of the hero here. Again, this is the story too where, you know, now talking about it is most affected by me trying not to do spoilers. I feel like there's very little I can talk about. So I'm just going to go to the final story, The Key to Time, which is also kind of a pun because season 16 was called The Key to Time. Big Finish also did a fifth Doctor sequel trilogy called The Key to Time, and now we have The Key to Time. And this story really shows the sheer devastation of the Time War and what it's costing the universe. Once again, not taking place in continuity with any of the other stories. I theorize the way it talks about some of the events in this story. I theorize that this story is a sequel to Dust Devil, way back from Volume 1, the first story of Volume 1. So, and because it's now like 6-7 months old, I am going to spoil Genesis. So in that first story, Dust Devil, the warrior kills the canon Sixth Doctor. With the way the Time War has destroyed the timelines, the warrior has become the prime canon, and the Sixth Doctor has become an aberration, and the warrior has been going through the timelines trying to kill the aberrations, making sure he continues. At the very end of Dust Devil, the warrior and Narvin watch what is essentially an elder god leave the universe. Like, the universe, because of the Time War, is essentially so screwed that the old ones and, essentially the gods are trying to flee from it. And this story calls back to that concept a lot. So the starting premise of this story, because it essentially branches out and becomes just wild and trippy. That is one thing too I say, because I've seen a lot of people say they miss the days of early experimental, really trippy Big Finish. If you do, get Doctor of War. Just straight up get Doctor of War. You will not be disappointed. It is so much like those early days. And where it's like key to time. So essentially, the universe is in such a state of decay that the Guardian herself calls the Doctor. I don't know if they explicitly call her the White Guardian or just the Guardian, but they say she is the last one. And the Doctor tells her, the warrior, sorry. Just whenever I say the Doctor, assume I'm gonna mean the warrior, because I'm gonna do that a lot, I feel like. But what the Guardian tells the warrior that basically, the one possible solution to ending the Time War is assembling the key to time, which the Doctor scoffs at and the warrior scoffs at and says, "Oh, I've hunted MacGuffins all throughout this Time War trying to end it. I even tried the moment." Fun little nod to Day of the Doctor. Actually, I'll bring that here. Colin Baker gives a really interesting performance here, because what the key to time is doing is it's basically doing the War Doctor's arc from Day of the Doctor and the TV show in this story, that essentially the warrior has been fighting for centuries. He feels he's nearing the end of his life, and rather than trying to fight, he is just tired. He is done. He wants to end this war as soon as possible. Damn the cost. So, like I said, he is at the same point here the War Doctor was in Day of the Doctor. And essentially, he kind of goes through the War Doctor's arc of wondering if after this, can he even become the Doctor again? So the Guardian sends the Doctor on the quest to assemble the key to time. But she doesn't send him alone. Davros has officially become a Doctor Who companion. And Colin Baker and Terry Malloy are terrific again. Not quite the same highs that they have in the story Davros, but their chemistry is still amazing. The banter between the warrior and the Doctor is really good. And just given how the warrior is characterized, the fact that he wouldn't hold back in regards to Davros is also played really well here. But essentially the Doctor and Davros are trying to assemble the key to time. Now, given that this story is an hour and the Key to Time season was 5 stories, you'd think this story would be very crowded or very rushed, but it's not. Ultimately, because it's not about assembling the key to time, or not in the way you'd think it would be. And I will just say this, at the end, Colin Baker gives this wonderfully performed monologue about the warrior, the Doctor, what have you, their role in the universe. And essentially that's where it ends. I will say this, again, just trying to be vague, because I do like this set. I do obviously recommend it. So I'll say this. Doctor of War Destiny ends where Doctor of War Genesis began. I hope that's not too much of a spoiler, but at the same time, it ends pretty ambiguously, which I got to applaud for, because I've said this before about storylines, like TV shows or what have you. Maybe not on my channel, but in general, I've said this before. I like ambiguous endings. Like Inception is probably the big one I can think of. I hate unresolved endings. Like when, say, a TV show gets canceled, but the season or wherever it is ends on a cliffhanger. And Doctor of War ends ambiguously, where if they don't continue this series, this can be accepted as a pretty good conclusion. But if they do, it ends in a spot where it could feasibly keep going. Like I said, Doctor of War is terrific. Colin Baker is still magnificent in this role. The stories are a bit more of a mixed bag than they were in Genesis, but nothing is outright bad. I do heartily recommend this set. And I think that's everything there. So it's October. There is one more thing I am planning, at least for this month. If anything else happens, it'll be on the fly. I will be reviewing Series 2 of the Eric Roberts spinoff, Master, Nemesis Express. So whenever that comes out, looking forward to talking about that. Have you heard Doctor Who Unbound, Doctor of War Destiny? What were your thoughts? Start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to Big Finish's website where you can purchase Doctor of War. And you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on the channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.